Welcome back to the show right now, Business Talk Radio. We are joined on the radio and via Zoom live with Dr. Aponte. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine, Jill. How are you?
Good. Dr. Harry Aponte, we call him. And he's also a licensed clinical social worker and so much more based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Give us a little bit of your background to start.
New Yorker, Puerto Rican, grew up in Harlem, South Bronx, now living in Philadelphia, married, and have a grown-up daughter.
Wow. Fantastic. And you work as a psychotherapist, clearly, right?
Right, and I specialize in family therapy, but I do all kinds of psychotherapy, and I have my own private practice, and I'm also an adjunct professor at Drexel University, where I help train couples and family therapists.
Great. Well, thank you. You've been sharing a lot of your own personal background and experience with us. And obviously, it makes you do what you do. Your love and passion clearly shows. Would you mind just addressing a little bit of your background, upbringing, and what got you into the field? And then I'd like to talk about our area of topic and discussion that you'd like to focus on for the show.
Well, you know, I grew up with a family that had its troubles as a family. I'm an only child. And very marginal income. I still remember in my 20s after graduation, I had hope and expectation that someday I'd earn $15,000 a year. That was my goal in life. All right. I went to Fordham, got a master's in social work there, went to for postgraduate training at the Menninger Clinic in Topeka, Kansas, which to me was like going to Mars, but America. Well, I mean, you know, you laugh, but I had never actually talked with a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant person in my life, had never had a real conversation with them. So this was a very strange and alien experience for me, but it was a blessing. You know, because the people I had to work with there were, the patients there were wealthy people, powerful people, some very well-known people. And I came from my ghetto mentality. And I had to stretch to find some commonality between my humanity and their humanity. So it got me out of my own, you know, restricted view of the world. And I was able to see and relate to and empathize with and care about people who were very different from me on the surface. But at their very heart, we were not really so different. And they suffered and I suffered. So I was able to relate to their pain with my pain.
Well, thank you for sharing. And the type of people that you help today as a psychotherapist, clients range from anyone having what types of problems, issues. How does it work with the psychotherapist, the type of people that come to your office in need, and in this day and age, Zoom?
Well, you know, I worked with people with means. Eventually came to Philadelphia to work with people who were disadvantaged, very much like my own family. Mostly African-American families and some Hispanic families. And I was able to relate not only to their personal pain, but also to see them in the context of their communities and how society contributed to the mental problems that they had. So it was a matter of, you know, learning to really care about people, regardless of who they were, where they came from, and what the source of their pain was. And given the kind of experience that I had, both at Menninger's and in the South Philly, it expanded me, it opened my heart, and I got to love the work that I was doing and got to love the people that I was working with.
Great. And I'll continue.
Well, I was just gonna tell the story of one particular guy that I was training as a therapist, and I thought he might provide a bit of an example of what I had to learn to do, which is to learn to value life in terms of my own personal goals, rather than be looking for approval and validation from people from outside. So if you're ready for that story, I'll tell you the
Sure,
story.
please.
Okay. This is a young man. He's, I would guess, in his early 30s. Very bright, very gifted man, who spent a good number of years trying to be a very moral man. He said he wanted to be a saint. He worked very hard at it, you know. However, then he developed a chronic illness, something that's not fully curable. So they had to live with and had to live with a lot of pain. And he felt disappointed by God. And he became rather bitter. And in fact, he became rather bitter and angry. So that was his life turned around at that point as a result. And but he got into the work of becoming a psychotherapist, and he thought, well, these people are going to love me, so I'm going to be very supportive and understanding and caring. But then he was so understanding and caring that he didn't want to confront them with anything that was unpleasant about what they were doing and what was going on in their lives. And so he felt somewhat limited in that regard. So he came to me and said, Harry, you know, I need some training, I need some supervision, some consultation, some help with this stuff. Well, we talked about that, but we also talked about, you know, this battle that he was having with God, you know, which was also turning him into trying to be a very nice guy with clients. Say, well, you know, it didn't take much for him to face the fact that being a nice guy with clients and not confronting people with how they're messing up their lives was not particularly the way to do good psychotherapy, right? And so we talked about that, and we talked about his problem in being at peace with the fact that he was suffering, that he had some pain, and the fact that he felt alienated from God. I mean, this was a serious thing for him, okay, because it affected his whole view of how he related to the world. Well, we worked on his clinical work and said, well, you know, why don't you try facing people with what you have to face in yourself, your own weakness? You know, to me, one of the most important things in my life was to face my weaknesses, all right? To confront my weaknesses and to learn from my weaknesses, and then to use my weakness in order to relate to other people's weakness. Mm-hmm. There's no better way to feel somebody else's weakness than to be in touch with your own weakness and your own failures. I believe that. I live that, okay? And he bought into that, okay? So we got to that, and he wanted to face his weakness. He was a man of courage, bright guy, wanted to do the right thing. And I said, why don't you try with your patients and help them face their weaknesses and their failures and how they were destroying themselves and hurting the good people in their lives. Well, he tried that, a little tentatively, but he tried that. And lo and behold, cases that were just purely stuck, they just turned around completely because the people wanted somebody to help them with that, to help them face that, help support them with that, help give them some courage to risk offending a client by saying, hey, you know, you're messing up your life. And I know something about messing up my own life. And so the client did not feel alone, could identify with his therapist and open up and changed, okay? Well, you know, that then made him think about his own weakness, about, you know, why am I still fighting with God? You know, why am I still in this battle with him? So I suggested a couple of books to him to read that might be of interest to him. And one was Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist who was in the concentration camps during the Second World War, you know, and he talked about his experience there, saying, you know, if I don't have my own spirituality and my own centeredness, and I'm going to be crushed by these people because they treat me like I'm nothing, but I am something in God's eyes. And so the man had hope in his life, and that was inspiring to him. And the other book that I recommended to him was Henry Nouwen's Return of the Prodigal Son. And if you remember the story, there was the son who said, give me my portion of the inheritance, and went off and spent his money on prostitutes and other nasty things until he spent all of his money, was starving to death, and decided, you know, the servants in my father's house get treated better than I'm treated out here, so let me go back there and say, Dad, just treat me like, you know, one of your servants. And Dad said, give him the ring, give him a beautiful clothes, and let's welcome our son home. And the problem was that the father had another son who had always been good, and then he learned, hey, this profligate's brother of mine gets a feast when he comes back home, and I'm just being treated as, you know, sort of taken for granted. And the father said, my son, everything I have is yours, you know, and I love you. And so the guy that I was working with said, you know, I'm that second son. I'm that one who said, you know, if I behave so well, why do you give me an illness that gives me so much pain and hurt? So he learned something about, you can learn from pain, you can learn from hurt, it can make you a stronger person. Same lesson that Viktor Frankl had learned, you know, and that turned him around. And it turned him around, and in his acceptance of his own pain, physical pain, and acceptance of his own personal human struggles and weaknesses, he became somebody who could open his heart up to other people who struggled also, and could care about them from his heart, not just from his head, as a psychotherapist. He became the psychotherapist that I knew he was capable of becoming, you know. And it's a path where you learn to do your therapy through your humanity, and you learn to love the people that you care about. You know, you're not just treating them. You know, Sigmund Freud talked about psychotherapists that they should be like surgeons. You know, all that means, you know, you're totally detached and your patient is unconscious under anesthesia. Well, that's not a human to human relationship, you know. And so the whole transformation of going from somebody who's detached and smart and clever to somebody who's warm, caring, and loving, and at the same time has the courage to face what is difficult, okay, turn this guy around into becoming fully, really the kind of therapist he could become, and also the kind of human being he could become, you know. So I was happy with him. I was happy with myself because I had gone through similar kind of transformation. It's very easy to depend and look at people praising you and saying you're terrific, but if you don't really believe it in your heart about yourself, okay, you really gain nothing. That's the lesson.
Beautiful. And at this time, we'll take a very quick commercial break. Let me get your best form of contact information.
Well, harryjaponte.com. Okay. That's my website.
Great.
That'll give you plenty of information.
All right, stand by. We will be right back after this very short commercial break.
Hey, road cyclist, do you want a real adventure? How about a week-long vacation in Tuscany or Lake Como, Italy? Cyclobella Italia tours are so much more than just great cycling. Come and enjoy not only cycling, but all the best in food, wine, sightseeing, and La Dolce Vita in Italy. Go to the website, psychobellaitalia.com, to register for the Psychobella Italia newsletter, filled with interesting information about Italy and the tours. Visit the website to view the photo gallery of prior tours and learn more about the fantastic cycling experience with Psychobella Italia. Email Joe at psychobellaitalia.com or phone 480-353-6660. Psycho Bella Italia. Ride, eat, drink, live.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to In the Spotlight with Jill Nicolini on Business Talk Radio, where we take your business to the next level. Welcome back to Business Talk Radio. Dr. Harry Aponte joins us once again from Philadelphia. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing well. So let's continue the conversation. I did promise a short commercial break.
All right. What I can do is in a couple of minutes just summarize an experience that a woman had that was very different, but also very much the same as this particular guy. This was a patient of mine at one time, a woman who had a learning disability as a kid. She had several sisters. They were pretty compliant. Mommy loved them, and this client of mine was the difficult child. Okay, but she also was pretty smart. Eventually became a relatively successful businesswoman, married a very successful businessman, and did well. She found her niche in the business world, moved to a new city, couldn't find good work there, fell into a depression, which was really speaking to something that was really deeply inside of her, which she always felt like there's something wrong with me. I'm really not good enough. Husband then said to her, you need to pay more attention to me. You're all involved with your depression. Although he was supportive of her, he still wanted more of her attention. And she felt like a failure. I'm not being good enough to him. I'm not attending to him. And in the effort to please him and make him happy, she also resented him. And they came to me, and they then went to couples therapy with one therapist, and she came to me alone. And what was the lesson? The lesson, I said to her, you really have to find yourself, and you have to find value in yourself. Why don't you look for something that is meaningful rather than just something that's successful? Well, she got into the community, got very involved in the community, got involved in volunteer work, helping people that were in need. And she felt, I'm doing something that's valuable. I like the person that I am right now. And I'm not just running around trying to get my husband's approval and trying to be a successful businesswoman in the world out there. Turned her life around completely, and it just goes back to something that that we all get so trapped up in, especially in today's world, that it's success that determines what you're worth. And it's really what I'm saying is what determines what you're worth is what you believe that you're doing something that's worthwhile, that your life is worthwhile, and that you're striving for things that are worthwhile. And she did that, and her life turned around completely. But it's again, I link that to my own life, to struggling in life, and you get the approval and the praise and the awards and all that. But in the end, it's how good a husband am I? How good a father am I? How good a therapist am I in terms of really helping people and doing something that's worthwhile? And it's got to be something that I believe in, that makes me feel like my life is worth something. And, that's just underlines all the work that I do in therapy. I want people to find themselves, to be true to themselves, and to be able to live a life that says, this is a life worth living, and it doesn't really depend on whether they like it or not. It depends on whether I know that this is something that I'm doing that's good. That's my story.
I love the story. Thank you. You're a great speaker, and you need your own show. Yeah, you have amazing stories, and your will to help people like this, and we do appreciate it. And as far as relationships, I'm sure that's something you deal with a lot. And relationships always aren't easy, right? Any relationship, right? From couples, from marriages to parents and children. And I mean, there's a lot with relationships. And can I just ask a question in regards to your business now? You know, we've been in COVID for quite some time, this pandemic. How have you seen a change in your clients or people in general? I know the anxiety, the stress we've talked about, but are you seeing anything in particular we should be aware of and maybe could just help our listeners today on?
Well, what we're seeing is the loneliness of people, you know, that they're not able to socialize as they normally would socialize, you know, and you know, stay 6 feet apart from one another, and you can't go out to a restaurant, and so that the paying attention to people's loneliness to me is the biggest factor, the most important one. And the good side of this, frankly, is when you have families and they're home together, and they're home together in ways that they weren't before, and to spend some time to really look at one another and say, hey, where are you? What's going on with you? Let me share with you what's going on with me, and really connect emotionally and deeply in a sense that we really care about each other and not just, you know, hang out with one another in our busy lives. So that is the positive side to me of what's going on today.
Great. Fantastic. And we do still have another 5 minutes left in our show. What else is it that you want to get out there and, you know, communicate with your listeners too?
Well, you know, right now, to me, the preoccupation has to do with this virus thing. I think it's very real. You know, it's you have parents who can't send their kids off to school, and so they have to do the teaching themselves. You know, husbands and wives who can't be socializing with other people, and they have to socialize with each other. You know, and so to me, it's a time to slow down. We have such a busy world, and we have, well, you know, it's you know, get to work very early and work late so that your boss thinks you're terrific and gives you a big raise. All right, and I'm talking about finding time, personal time with one another, where we get to appreciate each other and get to know each other in a way, and then in a way that's really meaningful. And what I mean by that is taking the time to really listen to one another so that we find out what's really going on with you and what do you need of me that I have not been giving you, okay? And to have that kind of frank kind of conversation, and then to figure out how do we spend time together in a way where we're more intimately connected emotionally, okay? Which will also play out well in the physical connection, all right? There's no negative side to that kind of understanding and closeness. And that's the thing that I would want to just support and encourage.
Great. And as far as contacting you, what should we do? Call you, email you, website, social media? Give us the best forms.
Yeah, if you get my website, you know, harryjaponte.com, it has my telephone number there, has my email address there, and I'm easy to get a hold of.
Great. Well, that's good to know. Any last minute words you want to leave with our listeners today? Any quotes, anything to keep us positive for the weekend ahead?
Yeah, you know, just let's start loving each other, you know. Yeah. And when people ask me, well, what's going to make a marriage work out? You know, I say to them, my test for people is, can you solve the problems that you have? Are you making the effort to solve that problem? Or are you just giving up, getting frustrated, and finding other entertainment to distract you from the problems that you're living with?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it today. And again, Dr. Harry Aponte, reach out to him. Of course, website, email him, talk to him, however you can get in touch with him. We appreciate the conversation. And looking to our next, we're actually going to be back on Business Talk Radio in just another half hour, correct? So
that's correct.
Perfect. And we'll have, anything you want to tease for that? What are we going to be discussing during that show?
We're going to be talking more about how we can love one another and get along with one another and make life more meaningful at a personal level. That's what we're going to talk about.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to speaking with you again. Make sure you guys tune in at noon today. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Everyone else, stay tuned. More Business Talk Radio is coming up after the break.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.